Everyone, Ali here. So we're going to talk next about employment contracts. Now, this has become a really hot topic recently because of the recent changes to the law. So I'm going to go through a couple of things that's important to highlight. So first of all, there's this dispute between should you hire somebody as an employee or should you hire them as an independent contractor? Now, for years, most of our doctors would hire their doctor associates as independent contractors because it was good for them from a tax perspective. It was good for the doctor associate from a tax perspective, especially if they incorporated, and they were willing to take the risk as far as the IRS and other state tax agencies are concerned. That has drastically changed over the last year with a lot of the battles that companies like Uber and Lyft have had with various states, including California. But more importantly, the federal government has followed suit and has passed some rules that became effective in March of 2021 that made it nearly impossible for a doctor associate to be hired as an independent contractor. So we are recommending that you hire all of your doctor associates as employees so as to avoid these potential complications with the IRS and the state agencies. Now, is the likelihood of being caught high? Probably not. I mean, still less than 1% of corporations are getting audited by the IRS, but we do expect that number to go up considering what is happening with the new administration and the investment that they're putting into enforcement with the IRS. So let's talk about contracts if you're a dental associate. So if you're an associate, there's a couple of things that are really important for you to keep in mind. One is you want to make sure the compensation is absolutely defined well in your agreement. And if you're straight out of school or maybe have a year experience or whatnot, then the likelihood is that you're going to be paid on a daily rate, somewhere in the range of maybe $500 to $700 a day. That then over time will change to a percentage of either your production or collections, depending on how long you're there with the practice. Usually at the 1 year, 2 year mark, depending on your productivity, your hand speed or whatnot, that can change. And so it's important to kind of keep that in mind. Now, the range for getting paid as a percentage can be anywhere from 25% to a high of 35%. If you're a specialist, we've seen it be even closer to 45%. So depending on the specialty that you're in. And so if you have any questions about this, let me know. But higher is not always better, when it comes to a percentage of the production or collections. And the reason for that is because a lot of times these practice owners aren't necessarily keeping in mind their overhead when they're calculating these percentages. So it can kind of put you in a little bit of a tough spot if they're starting to lose money on the production that you're making. And the example I'd like to share with you is this very simple one. Assume that you have, let's say, 65% overhead in a practice. So for every dollar that comes in, the owner pays 65 cents of expenses. Then on top of that, he or she pays you, let's say, 30%. So 65 plus 30%, you're at 95% of every dollar that comes in goes out the window. But of course, that's not the whole story. On top of the 30% that they're paying you, they have to pay taxes. They have other costs associated with your employment. So a lot of times that can actually turn into a negative number. So in essence, they are losing money every time you work. That's not something that they figure out immediately. Sometimes it takes 2-3 months, but eventually, the CPAs or they themselves realize what has gone wrong, and guess what happens? They terminate you versus changing anything else in the practice. So when you're negotiating your percentages, I would recommend somewhere around 30% of your production. Ideally, you want to stay away from collections because it's just too hard to navigate. The second thing with regard to employment contracts to keep in mind is make sure the term is set out. We recommend either a 6-month term or a 1-year term initially that auto renews or renews with the mutual agreement of the parties for another 6 months or a year. And that gives you an opportunity to see how the office is. The office gets to see how you are before committing to something long term. I don't recommend signing, a 2, 3, 4, 5-year contract, some of which is becoming commonplace, especially with group practices, unless there's an out clause in there that allows you to leave with 30 or 45 or 60 days notice. Okay, so keep that in mind. Now, benefits are really rare to be given in a for you as as an associate of any medical dental practice, but some things are more mandatory. So sick leave in many states has now become mandatory, and so if you're an employee, you need to receive paid sick leave. Health insurance may be required as well if they have a group health insurance plan, and then if they have some sort of retirement account, 401k, defined benefit or whatnot, you may be able to they may be able to, or they may have to contribute to that for you as well. But all other benefits are usually off the table. Paying for insurances, vacation, paid time off, those things are usually not included. Those are usually the doctor associate's responsibility, but keep that in mind. Important to keep in mind that they will probably have you sign a non-compete depending on the state that you're in. In some states, non-competes are legal. In some states, they are not. And so it's important to look into that and see where you fall in that. But don't ignore those sections, even if you're in a state like California that is illegal, because they could have language regarding intellectual property and theft of patients, theft of employees, that could be valid, okay? So again, really, really important. And then finally, make sure you look at the language about what happens and what your responsibilities are post-termination. What can you do, what can't you not do? Those are really important, because sometimes there's very strict rules about what they require of you, and those may not be things that you're willing to accept. Now, if you're an employer and you're hiring an associate, you want to be very specific about a couple of things. Of course, the compensation, you want to be absolutely crystal clear about that. If you listen to the beginning part of this video, you know that the percentages do matter. So talk to your CPA about what you can afford to pay your associate, and that includes benefits and other perks. Then you want to set the working hours. What time do you expect them to come? If you expect them to be there for the morning huddle, make sure that's taken into account. Make sure there's enough time also for them to wear their PPEs and things of that nature. Again, detail their job duties. Now, it might seem simple, because if you're hiring an optometrist or a dentist or a physician, you want them to work as clinically, but also you want to add other things as well. Like, for example, do you want them to work, on call? Do you want them to take emergency calls on the weekends or for their patients? So those things should be detailed as well. Termination language is also very important. Obviously, if they lose their license, they get convicted of a crime, things of that nature, they should, their contract can be terminated, but some not so obvious things should also be included. What if they, violate the terms of your employment agreement? What if they don't follow protocols, patient safety issues? What if they, what if you just need to let them go? Can you do that within 30, 60 days? So those are important. And finally, as the owner of a practice, what about trade secrets, intellectual property, your patients, your employees? How do you protect them? You want language that protects you against that, as that's a vital part of your practice. So these are some of the highlights, some of the most important things in an employment agreement. Again, remember, we are recommending an employment agreement over independent contractors now, but if you have questions about that, I'm happy to walk through it with you, and hope to talk to you guys soon. Take care.